Peace and welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Folks, today we got some conversation just as fire, just fantastic, just for you. Today we're going to be checking in with our very own Mr. Politics, Hassan Giordano, to give us his insight about some of the big political news, including the fact that President Biden is going to be having a major primetime address tonight to talk about MAGA Republicans. The president has shown that he is tired of the madness. We'll have that conversation. And then also, let's talk about these student loans. Folks are still trying to figure out how to process all of this. Well, we're going to be checking in with financial planner with SoFi Bank, Mr. Brian Walsh, to give us some insight on how this whole larger plan of student loans affects your pocketbooks and your wallet. So we'll have that conversation. And then later, let's talk about how a new AP African American course has debuted this fall in a number of schools across the country. However, this isn't just your regular Black history class. This is an updated class to talk about everything from civil rights leaders, social justice innovators, and features including literature and talking about the impact of movies like Marvel's Black Panther. We'll share with you the details of this new course. Plus, I got something for you for Trends Post and Doing the Most. So stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and being a part of the conversation. So excited. Happy Thursday to everybody that's tuning in today. Big shout out to my online culture crew. Really excited and really, want to get involved in these discussions with you. So make sure y'all get ready to post your thoughts and comments as we have these conversations. But before we do, make sure y'all support us here at Black Star Network. We're continuing to grow the brand, grow the platform, and we need your support. So go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com, provide your financial support for this Black-owned media, and let's continue to tell our story and plead our own case. Check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, it is Thursday, and I'm always excited to check in with my brother, Mr. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who is the owner of DMV Daily Media Group, to talk to us about some of the big political news that's happening. And of course, no conversation is complete without you. So we'll be certainly getting your comments and your take on all of these discussions. But Hassan, thank you again, brother, for joining us on this Thursday. How are you this afternoon?
I'm just right. How you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. First and foremost, President Biden is expected to address the nation tonight in a major primetime address. This address is unusual in the fact that it's not talking about an economic plan. It's not talking about any, public health crisis. It's talking about a faction of the opposing party, the GOP, that is considered to be a quote unquote threat to democracy. Here's what the president is warning of: a threat to democracy from MAGA Republican election deniers. And he plans to go prime time with this. Man, oh man, let me just tell y'all something. In the political space, this is a heavyweight address. Let me just share with you a little bit what the president plans to speak on, folks. He's going to, based on the reports, especially from the Washington Post, the president is going to focus on a movement that doesn't recognize free and fair elections and increasingly talks about violence in response to actions they don't like. And this is according to a White House official said in a preview of the speech set to begin at 8 p.m., former President Donald Trump and his allies have repeatedly claimed the 2020 election was rigged. So we got some key questions to come out of that. You can see those questions right there, folks. I'm asking questions like, what should we expect? How will this add to the division? Or do you think this will quell the division? And how do you think the American people will respond? So I want y'all folks to just post your comments, join us in the conversation right now on YouTube, on Facebook, and give me your thoughts about what do you think is going to happen, or what do you think the president might say in this primetime address? I think it's pretty, bro. I think it's I've never really seen something like this. And I mean, I've watched presidential addresses before, but this seems personal. This seems a very much more targeted. What's your take of that?
Yeah, it's nothing but political theatrics. Once again, look, it's dubbed the address tonight is dubbed the soul of the nation, right? So, and they're doing it of all places, Farajii, in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is
Oh,
the home of the United States Constitution, where it was written and signed at, right? Like, how
right,
much more theatrics do you get than that? I mean, here is a president who is using what we call a State of a Nation address, right? Which is typically used by presidents to address the nation for national threats or serious threats to our nation, right? This president, we saw him just a few months ago talk about gun violence, especially after what we saw down in Uvalde, Texas. We saw him last year in 2021 talking about the start of the coronavirus pandemic. So these addresses, these State of the Nation addresses, are typically used by presidents for that purpose and that purpose only. We have never, at least to my knowledge, seen a president take a national address to talk about the opposing party, the
right.
principles or lack thereof of that party. And you have a president who's now, they're addressing the nation about the serious threat of Republican extremism, but you're doing it with inflammatory remarks yourself. So what
Right.
does that to me does not solve the problem whatsoever, right? And on top of that, Farajii, we now know that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy will also plans to give an address before Biden's address tonight from none other than Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is home of
To
the President
the
Biden,
president.
and
Wow.
he's going to
Wow.
talk about what he heard from the American people this summer regarding rising crime, record high inflation, and other hardships brought on by Democrats and their harmful policies. So all it is basically is a shit show on both sides of the aisle. We saw this with and we talked about this before, the January 6th committee hearings, congressional hearings. That was nothing but political theatrics. That's all this is. They're basically trying to outduel one another. Who can generate and rev up their base more to show up on November 8th to take back Congress? And this is just one part of that.
So the question would be for me to you, Hassan, does this do anything? Does this move the needle for the Republicans or the Democrats? Now that we have these two opposing messages that are going to be spoken, um, with the American people being in the middle. I mean, of course, you still got people that are going to be on their specific sides, but I think a lot of folks, a lot of us are like, even though we might be Republican, Democrats, or even independents, we're like, you know what I mean? So does it move the needle for anybody?
I think if it moves the needle, it may move the needle for the middle. If they're smart, they're going to try to attack the middle, right? Middle of America, the independents, third parties who are not on the fringe of the right or the left, Republicans or Democrats, right? And when you talk about that, you can talk about a system that is broken. We know that to be true, but that's true on both sides of the house, not just one party or the other. And I think that this is what Americans are so fed up with. These past primaries, you saw an extreme on both ends, the left and the right, and during the primary. But you also saw record low turnout in many locations, including right here in the state of Maryland. 13.5% was the turnout in Maryland's last gubernatorial. Mind you, we had a wide open gubernatorial. There was no incumbent for not only just the governor's race, but also for the attorney general's race and the comptroller's race. The top three statewide seats, and yet we only had a 13.5% turnout during the primaries. And the reason is people are just fed up. I mean, we're in a society now where the economy is killing people. I mean, it's really literally killing people on top of coronavirus. the post-pandemic and what's coming out of that, nothing is getting done and accomplished on the congressional level and in many cases on a local level to really help the American people. And you want me to come out and vote for you or vote for your part? Like, people are like, no, you're not doing anything for me. Why in the hell am I going to come out and vote for either one of you fools? Like, to them, it just seems like it's a broken system. And so I think the best thing the president can do to move the needle is, one, talk about a system on how we move this country forward on both ends of the aisle, right? Don't just blame it all on the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. Understand that democracy and government is about democracy. It's about the art of compromise and bringing that back to the American government. But two, also speak about issues that you know will move the needle, such as the woman's right to choose. We saw in Kansas, we saw to some degree in the New York 19th congressional district primaries not too recently, or the special election they had up there, that this issue moves people regardless, especially women. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the staggering numbers of women who registered to vote, we haven't seen this level of voter registration amongst females since the 1970s, when they allowed women to be able to have the right to vote, right? And so now you're starting to see that, and you're starting to see more women, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of race, start to get mobilized and come out in these elections because they're concerned about their right to choose, right? After the post overturning of Roe v. Wade. So these are issues that the president can speak to that I think could possibly move the needle to some degree. But no, you're not going to convince Republicans, especially right-wing, quote unquote, MAGA Republicans, to all of a sudden say, oh, you know what? I was wrong all this time. You're right, President Biden. I'm going to change my tune. No, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's why I even asked that question, Hassan, because it feels like this is going to be an opportunity where both sides are going to dig in their heels and say, you know what? Y'all are crazy. You are wrong. Regardless on which side you're in, you're going to be feeling more emboldened in your position, more so than willing, like you said, willing to compromise. And so I don't know if this is going to work, especially given the fact that the president has already kind of built some momentum. He's gotten some key policies. He was able to get that move that through Congress. He got some momentum around from the climate issue to even though people have pushed back, but he's moving forward with the student loan situation. He's dealing with the inflation situation a little bit with the latest act. I mean, he's getting some momentum. He's getting some big things done. And it's like, now y'all want to switch up the conversation and go hard on the MAGA Republicans, which we should. But I'm wondering, and King Lee, one of our lawyer watchers, you brought this up, and I'm right there with you, dear brother. You said this. I think President Biden's anticipated address is not the right move at this time. I think it will energize Trump's maniacs. He should wait to see if Trump is charged or not. Timing is everything. Art of War, Sun Tzu. It talks about that wars are won because of timing. The timing of it all, Hassan, seems like, should he wait just a little bit longer as the Trump situation continues to unfold? As Republicans, and based upon what I've been reading, bro, Republicans starting to feel a little defeated right now. They're not quite sure that they're going to take over the House and the Senate come November, right? Because of the quality of the candidates. The timing of this. What's your view of that?
Well, I think the timing is based off of, you're seeing it, we're talking about it from an outside perspective, right? But they're looking at polling. They're looking at things that we probably don't have much insight on. Now, as a political insider, there are some things that I know that are going on that will come to fruition in the coming days. And so I can understand why he's doing it now. They're capitalizing off what they know that's about to come forward, not only through the courts, but through Congress, right? But again, we're also almost 2 months out, a little over 2 months from the November 8th general election. Is this the best motivating time to do this? Is one question. The second question would be, what do you get out of this, right? What are you planning to bring? And that's why I'm going to be really interested to hear what the president has to say tonight in terms of solutions, right? People don't want you to come up there and talk and criticize and complain about stuff that we really know already. At least the majority of Americans know the craziness that exists on the right side of the aisle when it comes to the far right MAGA movement. But talk about some things that are solvable solutions or something that we did not know already. Now, I think this White House is trying to distance himself from the Justice Department investigation of the president. And I don't see how you do that. I mean, for the president to initially come out and say they had absolutely no knowledge that they were going to serve this warrant on Marga, like, how do you not know that as the president and the commander in chief, you don't know your Department of Justice is about to serve a warrant on the first sitting president in history? Like, come on, man. Nobody believed. The dog didn't even believe that one, right? So they're trying to distance themselves, but to what degree? So I think at some point they got to stand up and say, you know what? This is our Justice Department doing this. We're going to go to every length that we can to make sure that people, regardless of whether you're a president, you are not above the law. And if you have broken the law, we're going to make sure that you are not only charged, but convicted of doing such. But, this wishy-washy, well, one day you're with her. I think this is kind of laying that out. I'm hoping that this is kind of defining what the Biden administration plans to do against this administration. Because look, at the end of the day, this big lie theory continues to exist. Senator Cotton just came out today, followed by, and I know we'll talk about this in a little while, the former Alaskan governor, Sarah Palin, former vice president, and basically said that the election in Alaska was rigged because it's what's called ranked choice voting, and it didn't come out the turnout that they thought it was going to come out. She ended up losing. So now the Republican mantra now is their go-to line is, oh, it must have been rigged. You know what I mean? Like, and so that is what Trump started in 2020. And many Republicans, some to their detriment, others to their success, at least that we've seen in the primaries thus far, will continue this false narrative moving forward. And many Americans who don't know no better, especially about the electoral process, will continue to douse that fire of this big lie. And so I think if the president is going to come out and kind of lay out the process and lay out how this is a false narrative and how we need to move forward, united together as a nation, then it may have some success. But if you're just going to come out and say they're the big bad wolf and we told you so, and that's just not going to work.
That may not work. All right, let's get to some more comments as folks have been checking in to talk about this. Folks, we've been discussing with Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, the upcoming presidential address tonight, where President Biden is expected to talk about the soul of a nation, as he says that the real threat to democracy are MAGA Republicans. Woo! Woo! All right, let's go to what you got to say, folks. So many of you are checking in to share your thoughts on it. Sophia Gonzalez. Sophia, good to hear from you, sis. You say Biden should have the military on alert, and if they knuck, we buck. Period. Sophia's an old school hip hop head on that one. She went old school on that one.
Yeah. I heard
but for real talk though, Hassan, should that be a real concern for us right now, bro?
From the military side of things, no, but I do think that America needs to really understand that we are really getting to a point in this country that I can see a civil war occurring in the next decade. Like, this isn't like far off, talk. Like, I'm talking about it. You have an extremist in this country. We've seen it from the attempted kidnapping of Michigan governor. You know what I mean? Like, there are individuals in this country, just the individual who went to the FBI headquarters and ended up down in this country today, that have gone so far to the right or to the left that there doesn't seem to be rational-minded individuals bringing it, reeling them back in like we used to have. Like today, think about the rational-minded adult in the room is supposed to be Donald Trump. And if that's your rational-minded adult in the room, we're in trouble. And so when you have millions of Americans, I mean millions, this ain't just a couple 100,000 or a couple thousand, millions of Americans who, if tomorrow Donald Trump got on his little social network and said, let's storm the Capitol, they would do it all over again, regardless of what happened from January 6th. That is a problem. That is a real issue. And so, as much as I'm sure the commenter was kind of joking in essence. I think it might not be such a joke. Like the president really does. President Biden needs to have the National Guard, the military, and all of them ready for action just in case this right-wing MAGA movement decides to do
Very
something
much.
on January 6th.
Hey, bro, very much so. Let's go to Damon. Damon, my guy, you said the topic of this address should have been done when the voting rights bill was on the table. Yeah.
They need to get something done on the voting rights bill.
What'd you say?
They need to get something done on the voting rights bill. Stop.
They gotta get something done on the voting rights bill in general, and they should have brought a national address around that issue. You know, if you're talking about the threat to democracy, it's in action. The real threat is in action on this voting rights bill.
And see, people didn't see it when the Supreme Court years ago, conservative Supreme Court, knocked down provisions of the Voting Rights Act. People weren't paying attention. But it's the same thing that we're seeing right now when they just overturned Roe v. Wade. That is not the end goal, right? When they gutted a portion of the Voting Rights Act, that allowed these states who had at one time would have been checked by the Department of Justice, would have never enabled Georgia and Florida and these other, Texas and these other states to enact these policies that we're starting to see, these voting rights policies, because of the Voting Rights Act. But once they gutted that from the Supreme Court level years ago, they realized that was their strategy of being able to not only just to gut it, but then to start to pass laws, especially down south, in order to make sure that they continue to disenfranchise African American and minority voters. What do you think they're going to do after they overturn Roe v. Wade? Like gay marriage, interracial marriage, all that's going to be on the table, and the Supreme Court Justice himself all but said it in an opinion. So we better be worried. Don't take it for granted, because trust and believe it's right around the corner.
Absolutely, absolutely. Janae, you checked in and said, "Wait, it's not theatrics. Finally, a white man talking about his race on domestic terrorism. When does that happen? We ain't seen this before. This is how effing serious the demise of our country is in." Well,
yeah, but here's what they're not going to talk about, Farajii. I don't see him getting up there and talking about what's going on down in Jackson, Mississippi, right? And all these 85% of these African Americans down there, and 85% majority minority in the district down there, who are suffering through weeks, if not months, of actual water, drinking water to wash their ass with, and wash up with, and go to the bathroom with. He's not going to talk about that. Neither is Kevin McCarthy. These are real. If you really want to be serious about moving this country forward, these are issues that the president needs to be talking about. Not partisan politics, but how do we come together, regardless of party, and start helping the American people, whether it be down there in Mississippi, whether it be about the economy right here in America, in all communities, whether it be post-COVID, and how do we get past that? But to get on television and talk about how bad the Republicans are, to me, just doesn't pass muster.
There it is. There it is. Coroner, you checked in and said, "We vote our interests, and at this time in history, we must vote for Democrats. Politics aren't about personalities, but advancing our interests and maintaining our livelihood, especially this November 22nd. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Thank you so much, sis. Good to hear from you. Young C, you said, "I think it's wrong-headed to both sides, this thing. You'll never bring the country together without justice." Absolutely. And justice is rooted in truth. Justice is fair dealing, right? So if you want to really push this thing along, you got to recognize some things about yourself and recognize some things about the party, and then said, all right, well, how do we make sure that we both get something from it? Going back to your point, Hassan, about compromise. Young Sikh, thank you. Shalinda, you say, good. I want the Republicans to, Repulsivantins to feel like they are defected. Hell, I'd also want to actually be defeated too. Defected too. Oh, defeated. Hell, I also want to be actually be defeated too. Okay. All right, Shalinda. Oh my gosh. Wow.
I never heard that one before.
Repulsatives. And here's the thing, folks. The other thing to keep in mind as we hear from, as we prepare to hear from the president this evening, Trump said that he's going to financially support January 6th defendants, and he's going to look very favorably upon about full pardon if he wins the 2024 election. He said it on a conservative talk show host with Wendy Bell. He said that on Wednesday. He said that today, excuse me. So he's looking at the fact, Hassan, that first, even though there are some rumors saying that he's going to delay his announcement because of mounting legal issues, but he's still putting it out there that he's going to pretty much save those people who ran up on the Capitol. Well, so there's a very, very serious war going on. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, and I want to kind of get your point very quickly before we take our next pause. Where do black people sit in this? Because black folks, we've always been on the side of not always, but a lot of us, and for a lot of times, we've been on the side of the modern democratic ideology, right? Democratic ideology. And at this point, when it comes to talking about Trump and his followers, the MAGA movement, and all of those things, black folks aren't a part of that. So where do black folks sit in all of this, do you think, Hassan?
Over there with Kanye West. That's about the only black folks you're going to see anywhere around.
Oh, we might as well just say Herschel Walker.
Right. That's, if you want some sellout blacks, I'm sure you can find a few here and there. But, you got to think about it. Making America great again was never about black people. It was taking us back to a time, and it is about taking us back to a time where black people were endangered species in white people's eyes, that were slaves and, 3/4 of man. Like, we were never whole to them, and we never will be moving forward, regardless of who you are, what position, or how much money you have. And that's what I think our people, no matter how successful they get, don't seem to understand, is individuals like that don't look at you as a human being, right? They look at you as 3/5 of man. They look at you as an indentured servant, right? Because to them, that's what you are. And people don't understand that because they think I'm a part of them. They accept me. No, they don't. They tolerate your ass, but they don't accept you at all, especially as an equal. I'm going to leave that there. I know we got to go to the break, so I'm going to leave that there.
Yes, we're going to leave that there. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more with Mr. Hassan Giordano, Mr. Politics himself. Let's talk about some of these other issues. Let's talk about the fact that in Alaska, former governor of Alaska, Sarah Palin, has lost the election to an Alaskan native. And what does that mean for the GOP in that part of the country? And then let's talk about Jackson, Mississippi. I know Brother Roland has been discussing it thoroughly, but looking at how this whole situation is played out, is this a true example of failure of leadership on the Republican side? So we'll have that conversation. So stay with us. Those things are coming up next in the next 30 of right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Can you believe the nerve of these Republicans? They only want to block progress for our community. They talk about cutting Medicare and Social Security. They played politics with veterans' health care. They voted against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and funding for our HBCUs, and against lowering prescription drug costs for our seniors. These Republicans keep trying hard to stand in the way, but President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Democrats won't let them. They are delivering for us. The Democratic National Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Mr. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who serves as the owner of DMV Daily Media Group, to give us the latest analysis on a number of major political stories. Let's bring Hassan back in. Hassan, let's talk about Alaska, your favorite state in the union. Sarah Palin, who is the former governor, former VP, president, VP nominee when the late John McCain was running for office back in 2008. She lost. She lost to Mary Peltola, who is a Democrat, and Mary Peltola is the first Alaskan Native American to win a seat in Congress. So that is historic in and of itself. But she lost. Now, Sarah Palin was supported by President Trump. I'm not surprised. None of us should be surprised by that. She was supported, but it just speaks in volumes about where the sentiment for her and her brand of politics is. Some people say that this is the end for her political comeback. What's your take on that, Hassan?
Yeah, I think it was the end before she even put her name in a hat on this one. Look,
it was the end before it started. Okay.
Yeah, already done. First of all, Mary Peltola not just being, the first Alaskan native to serve in Congress, but the first female to hold this seat. Right? Alaska has one congressional seat as opposed to other states who have typically more than just one. And you got to figure Don Young held that for the past 50 years. I mean, a half a century, this man held the same position before he passed, God rest his soul, back in March. And so they're running in a special election that we just saw happen. And then to some, it may be a little confusing because now they're only holding the seat until his term ends in January, but they're also running in November for the seat for the next 2 years in the actual election, midterm election. And I think, Mary Peltola in many aspects will probably end up winning that. I think, I'm of the impression that it wasn't just about, because a lot of people are comparing this to kind of a bellwether state on, whether Democrats are going to have a strong midterm. And I think David Axelrod, the former strategist for former President Barack Obama, said it best. You can't mitigating factors should actually really temper the impulse that people will have on this, because a Democrat knocked off Sarah Palin, a Republican, for what is known as a Republican seat. Alaska, for all intents and purposes, is a more conservative state, but they have an independent street. But they also have what's called ranked choice voting, Farajii, and they just implemented this process of voting. Most people go off of a different style, kind of what they call first past the post type of thing. So it's basically plurality vote. You can get 31% of the vote, but as long as you get one more than your challenger, you win. That's the plurality vote. In ranked choice voting, it's a little different. because you may be running head up or with multiple individuals, like this race was 3 individuals, but you have to get at least 50%. If you don't get 50%, then the last place individual would have to drop off, and then the people who vote don't just vote for that one person, their choice. They'll vote for the person they like the best. Then they'll write number 2, who they like the second best, number 3, who they like the third best, so on and so on and so forth. And so then once that last person gets dropped off, then the second place and the third place voters get added to that, the people who are still there. What that does for Farajii, though, is make them not run to the extreme, to the right or to the left, which we see in most primaries, we talked about before. Most primary elections you see these flamboyant right-wing or left-wing people winning because they run to the extremes of their parties, and they're the ones who usually win. In ranked choice, you have to build consensus, and you have to really be able to, as we talked about, have that compromise, so that way if you're more right-wing, then you can build a consensus with those who are more moderate and or more liberal, so that way you're their second and third choice vote, right? It's a whole different process. It's more like a general election than anything. And that's why I think Mary Peltola is going to be so successful in November, because she's already built that consensus across the board moving forward. And that's basically what a general election you see out of a general election. It's not just your party anymore. Now you got the opposing party voting for you, and the candidates and independents and third parties. And so, Sarah Palin, look, for all intents and purposes, she was a failed, miserable governor. She left midterm during her governor's race in order to be this right-wing talk show host, right? That failed as well. And so many Alaskans felt like she abandoned them long ago, and she really wasn't a true Alaskan. They felt like she was a carpetbagger in her own state. So, I think Mary was just, the catalyst to help push her out. But like I said earlier in the program, now she's following the words of Senator Tim Cotton and trying to act like, because ranked choice voting is a different process, that all of a sudden it was rigged, and God forbid they actually ended up losing. Now all of a sudden it must be the big lie all over again.
So, this is interesting because Sarah Palin has been around for the past 10 years. We've seen her kind of going through all of these things, like you said, some of her ups and downs. But, I find her to be like the prototype of new Republican woman. That and Mike V, you pointed this out, and I think I have to say I agree with you, Mike. You said Sarah will still have a place within the RNC. She was the catalyst for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert before they were even politically constructed. I think that's a good point. Do you feel like she kind of set the standard of this type of quote unquote modern MAGA woman? You think that there's still there's a place for her in the RNC?
Yeah, the right wing idiot is what I call them. That's all they are, right?
Okay, that has a lot of space in that place.
And they fit perfectly.
There's a lot of slots to fill there.
Yeah, think about it. When Sarah Palin came in as vice president back in 2008 with John McCain, many people at that time, we didn't get the 2010 Tea Party movement yet, right? The sweep across the board back in 2010. So we were pre that. And so at that time, we had very much centered politics where people understood the role of government, people paid attention. And here you had a vice president who really came in and on national television showed that she was a buffoon for all intents, that they basically selected her basically for her looks, and that was all pretty much about it, right? And people kind of saw that and like, what? Even Republicans were like, you got to be kidding me, this is the best you can do. And so I think that never left her, right? People never took Sarah Palin as a real intellectual Republican, someone that could be, a Newt Gingrich type of Republican, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, that's, she opened the door for many of these right-wing MAGA individuals that we have today. I think she'll be find it hard to compete against those individuals because Sarah Palin has never been a social media-based individual. And I think a lot of them, whether from the left or the right, whether it's AOC or Marjorie, I hate even calling her name. She's such a buffoon. But those individuals have played into the stereotypes of individuals through social media. Had there not been social media, a lot of these people wouldn't even exist to the nature they are today, right? And so Sarah Palin is much like a Kwesi Mfume, a person of the past who may not catch fire because they're not used to the new ways of how you get to the electorate and how you kind of brand yourself to the nation. But there is room for her because, again, Trump supports her wholeheartedly. And I think that they're going to find a way to run Sarah Palin. She still has a national name, right? That means a lot in politics where you have 100% brand recognition. So there's definitely room for her to grow within the national party. But I think in terms of Alaskan government, her days are over with.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's go from Alaska to Mississippi and Jackson, Mississippi. If you've been keeping up with this story, there has been a number of issues that Jackson, Mississippi has been hit with torrential rains that has caused the city's water system to really implode. Many people are saying that this is not just something that happened overnight, but this is after years of neglect to the water system, to the city that houses nearly 80% Black, that is nearly about 80 to 85% Black. And as a result of failed and poor leadership by the Republican state leaders. Just wanted to kind of get your take on the whole situation. We know that there was and folks, you can stream it. There was a presser yesterday with the mayor of Jackson, Brother Lumumba, Mayor Lumumba, and we had a chance to talk to him months ago about the work that he's doing in Jackson, but talking about how this issue is a long-standing issue, that the city of Jackson has been always trying to get more money for the resources, but the Republican leadership did not allocate those resources either timely or never did, and never really invested in the city of Jackson. So as a result of that, hundreds of thousands of people are in this crisis right now. What do you make of this? Is I know we can kind of go back and forth, Hassan, on the political things of whose fault it is, but at the end of the day, people in Jackson need clean, healthy water.
And that was my main concern when I talked about the president, addressing issues like this tonight, as well as, the House Minority Leader McCarthy, because this is real life issues, right? These are issues that hundreds of thousands of citizens, regardless of race, regardless of economics or anything else, have to deal with. This is, can you imagine for weeks, if not months, having to come home, even being at work, not being able to have water to wash with, water to flush the toilets. These kids had to be bused from school to school because they didn't have water at their school to be able to drink or to go to the bathroom with. We're talking about toddlers who can't just hold their stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they're ready to go to the bathroom, and you got to put them on a bus and take them to another school in a surrounding jurisdiction just to have the basic necessities. Now, look, the mayor of this city, Lumumba, he came in with this radical agenda, right? And I think this is what I'm talking about. This is the partisan divide we live in today. He came in with this agenda, and Republicans wanted to see him fail miserably because he basically became the face of the radical left movement across this country. And when I say radical, I'm talking about stuff that we need as Black people. It's radical to white people, but it ain't us, right? Civil rights and things that we should have been having a long time ago, right? This was a conversation he was having about what we needed in Mississippi, which, again, in that city itself is 83% African-American. But you saw so many people leave, especially whites, back in the 70s and 80s when integration started, if forced integration started coming, whites left and then wealthy Blacks left. And the city really never dealt with the under infrastructure of the pipes and things that we're starting to see come to fruition now, not just in that city, but in cities across the country, including right here in Baltimore. And they never really had the financial infrastructure to fix it and or the political leadership to do that. So when you come in with this big radical, agenda, you're not thinking about, okay, well, do I even have enough money to keep the lights on? And so what happens is now you have the Republican leadership because there's a Republican Governor Reeves and a Republican legislature who wants him to fail, and they're not willing to give up the resources necessary to help the hundreds of thousands of citizens in this major city to survive. And so now you have a political stalemate. They want to show the world that, yeah, you want to be this left-wing progressive, this is what's going to happen to you. And that is what you're playing with people's lives now, right? This is no longer about politics, about Democrat, Republican. This is about people's lives and livelihood. So if you want to talk anything, President Biden, tonight and move the needle, you need to talk about real life issues like this and how we come together as a nation to help solve these crises. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of anybody getting up and going out to vote if all y'all going to do is continue this bullshit and nobody actually represents the interests of who you're supposed to represent for?
No doubt, no doubt. And Hassan, what do you make of this idea? First, I mean, to your point, the city is under a state of emergency right now. President Biden has come out on record to say that he supports that. The state governor, Republican governor, Tate Reeves, he declared that this has been a real strain on the city's largest water plant, O.B. Curtis, according to the reports. And the other issue with water pumps at a secondary treatment facility has had some problems. But then they also said that white flight has drained the city's resources. Mm-hmm. That white people who are living outside of Jackson are really unaffected by this recent water crisis. That's how this disparity, that's how deep the divide is, that in the city, people are suffering. Over 150,000 or more are suffering. In the suburbs, white residents are unaffected. So white flight has drained the resources. What do you make of that?
Well, see, people fail to realize is when you're in a city like that, in any city, you have to be able to have a certain economic level of your residents in order to pay the taxes, whether it's property tax, so forth, in order to keep this city sustainable, right? And so when white flight happened, that we just talked about earlier, about leaving the city based off of forced integration and so forth, that city in and of itself, I think about 25%, a quarter of its population lives below the national median level, right? And so that means basically, essentially, a quarter of their population is broke, living in poverty, all right? So 3/4 of the population then has to kind of pick up for that in terms of their taxes and so forth. So they just didn't have the means to be able to pay for an infrastructure because when you're talking about pipes and things of that sort, it gets very costly because you got to dig underground to deal with a lot of these pipes and refurbish and or renew a lot of this stuff. And so what happened was, before the flooding that we saw recently, back in December, we saw the freezing of a lot of these pipes, which again ended up dealing with the waterways. And back in December, we saw thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, without water for weeks, turned into months. And then finally you get out of that, and now you see the flooding, and then it's all over again, right? So this is a recurring problem. And the governor, instead of declaring a state of emergency and really putting resources behind it, because he knows that his constituents outside of the city could care less, because they don't want to shoulder the financial burden of being able to help these people in the city, because they don't have to deal with it. And President Biden should have been stepped in and dealt with this. To talk about, oh yeah, we're going to finally give you some state of emergency funds. Well, the problem with that is that dries up after the state of emergency is over with. So once you put it in, you have to really physically rebuild this city, right? And be able to have a sustainable revenue system moving forward. Otherwise, it's just patchwork. And that's the problem. Until this state, not just the city, but this state comes together and says, this is what we need to put in place to help Jackson, Mississippi moving forward, then none of this stuff is going to work. It's just going to be patchwork moving forward. But you're going to have to be able to sit down at the table together, Republican and Democrat alike, to be able to solve this issue, regardless if you live in Jackson, Mississippi, or you live on the outskirts of Jackson, Mississippi, to make sure that the people of Jackson, Mississippi actually have running water and the necessities of life. We're not asking anybody to build mansions for them. We're just talking about the necessities of having the
Right.
necessities of moving forward in life. And
But the crazy part
that
about it
conversation has to happen.
but here's the absolutely. And let me tell you, the crazy part about it is that this is not the first time that Jackson has had a water issue, right? Last year, the Brookings Institute, which is the nonprofit organization research group, they wrote in March of last year, after Jackson faced another water shortage, that the infrastructure is often poorly maintained or intentionally overlooked in particular places, leading to a lack of access, affordability, and safety for many communities of color. This stuff has been happening for so long that there are more than enough signs, Hassan, that this needed to be addressed. And let me just share with Sophia. I think this is you. Oh, I'm sorry, McCole. You put it out there, but let's put McCole's comment out there. McCole, you said, "Look, I hope that people do not try to blame the water crisis in Jackson on the current mayor Lumumba. Sounds like this has been a decades-long issue." That's the thing, because politics will make you seem like it's under this one administration, the current administration, but this thing has been happening for years. And so how do we make sure that people see the full, the big picture of this conversation? The big picture is Black people have been neglected in Jackson for many, many years. The infrastructure is old and decrepit and no longer can sustain itself, and it needs to be restored. How do we make sure that those messages get out there, and instead of making it just a political football or even to make it just a race issue, that this is poor leadership from the state level all the way down to the people who are to the stakeholders and those who gain from Jackson, Mississippi. How do we keep the conversation there, Hassan?
Because you have to have responsible politics. Look, I won't lay the full blame on the mayor, right? But part of the blame does have to be on him, because he came in 2017 understanding that this was an issue. Again, this didn't happen overnight. Yeah. So coming in with that understanding, you have to look at the progressive policies that you really want to implement may have to be put on the back burner, because right now we have to deal with this real life crisis, this infrastructure. And it sounds like, and I don't know this to be exact, that they just did patchwork along the way, and it's finally
it's always, yeah.
You know what I mean? And at some point, like in Baltimore, we had the same issue with infrastructure. You have to just say, you know what, enough kicking the cans down the road. We're going to have a plan. This is the plan of action. We're going to have to get these pipes redone. This is how much it's going to cost, and we're going to have to raise taxes in order to do that. Otherwise, there's no way in the world, unless we get a huge cash infusion, which is just really unrealistic until COVID happened, from the federal government or state government. So at this point, we're going to have to raise taxes, unfortunately, in order to do this. But this is how we're going to do it in order to fix the problem moving forward. And it sounds like the governor is unwilling to sit down with the mayor and or vice versa to come up with ideas and solutions on how they move that problem forward, instead of just patchworking and just say, oh, let's just get past this crisis. But then 6 months from now, you have the exact same crisis all over again. You got to put your big boy pants on. Adults need to come to the table and actually come up with solutions, regardless of how painful those solutions may be, but get it done.
Right. And this speaks volumes, Hassan, about the big issue of infrastructure in this country. I know that when we were talking about the Build America Back Again, that plan, which focused on infrastructure, this should have been a part of this conversation. You know what I mean? Like when we see this level of neglect, where people feel like a storm, a natural happening, can just completely add stress to a system. Look at the images, folks. Take a look at this video. I mean, a storm. In Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, New Orleans, Louisiana, these are places that are not immune to big storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, those things, right? And then now this happened. This is like Katrina all over again, bro.
I was just about to say,
It's
it looks
going to
just like
force black
images of
people to
Katrina.
leave. Say it again.
I was just about to say, it looks like images of Katrina all over again, where George W. Bush was,
Right.
ignoring the problem because guess what? The people that are living in those towns don't look like them.
I mean, I just, and I don't like the finger pointing. The fact is that black folks are suffering, man. Black folks are suffering. And as a result of this, I bet you, let's give it 3 to 5 years or so, and you've seen this happen and time again. A natural disaster comes, something that we have no control over. It hits one of our cities, predominantly black area. We saw it in New Orleans after Katrina, and boom, that city never came back to being a predominantly black city ever again. And it's just sad, bro. It's really, really sad. And like you said, you at this point, the real issue is how you gonna fix this shit, right? Like we could go back and forth and be like, oh, who's responsible? Somebody needs to fix this. Somebody needs to fix this, man. Quick. Because guess what? It may rain again.
Oh, it's going to. You can best believe that.
So if it rains, so once it rains again, then what? You know what I'm saying? Like, so we playing, and to your point, bro, and I'm with you wholeheartedly right there, Hassan. So much of this political, partisan, bickering, trying to do all this posturing that people do. At the end of the day, this is people's lives, man. This is real life. People are hoping, like we get on this space, and I'm very, very, and I try to be very, very conscious of how we have conversations, political conversations, because, if you go too hard in one, like this is people's lives, man. This is not just headlines. This is not just some sort of personalities. This is people's lives. When political leadership make good decisions, people benefit from it. When political leadership make dumb decisions, bad decisions, the people feel the consequences of it. And guess what? It affects their life. Not just their pocketbooks, not just the data on who voted for who. It affects them in a very fundamental way. You got the last word, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my solution is this, Farajii, is if natural disasters and issues like this happen, start putting the onus on those in charge. If Governor Reeves acts like it's no big deal, they make you go down there and live in Jackson, Mississippi without water and all that. And I guarantee when you start forcing them to have to live in squander and have to live with these things, I bet you things get fixed immediately. Look, we're here in Baltimore, Maryland. We still don't got AC and heating in the schools. So they got to close schools every day because of the heat, half a day, because they had the money, but guess what? They just never fixed the infrastructure. We'll put AC in. So across the country, we see our kids wrapped in blankets and coats during the wintertime and sweating uncontrollably during the summertime, closing schools because you had billions of dollars and yet you chose not to fix the problem that exists that deals specifically with our children, right? So my solution is, until that gets done, freeze the salaries of the school CEO and all the top brass until it gets fixed. And I guarantee it'll get fixed tomorrow.
There it is. There it is. Hassan, Mr. Politics Giordano, who is the owner, founder of DMV Daily Media Group. He joins us every Thursday from 3 to 4. Hassan, always a pleasure, and it's always so good to talk to you about these political issues, bro. We're going to have to, reconnect after the president has his words tonight and talk about what's going to really be happening in this country after his address. So I look forward to talking to you soon. Bro, me neither. All right, thank you, Hassan. All right, folks, let's take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about how the student loan reduction is going to affect your wallets. We're going to check in with Mr. Brian Walsh from SoFi Bank, who is a financial planner and student loan expert, to give us his insight about what's next for the reduction as well as the ending of the moratorium. Then also, we got to talk about AP. how the associate press, advanced placement, a new AP class, a new course on African American history debuts this fall, and we'll give you some details about it. And I just wanted to get your take on what you think of the class and how do you think it's going to impact Black and white students in schools. We'll have that conversation. Plus, I got something for you for Trends Post and Doing the Most. And I see so many of you are checking in about Serena. Yep. We'll talk a little bit about Serena. All right, stay with us. That's all happening next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Can you believe the nerve of these Republicans? They only want to block progress for our community. They talk about cutting Medicare and Social Security. They played politics with veterans' health care. They voted against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and funding for our HBCUs, and against lowering prescription drug costs for our seniors. These Republicans keep trying hard to stand in the way, but President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Democrats won't let them. They are delivering for us. The Democratic National Committee is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you show your continued support for us here at Black Star Network as we continue to have the conversations that are very important to you while having it with our insight, our interest in mind. So just go to our website right now at Black Star Network. Please, you can donate today. Share your financial support, and most importantly, continue to let people know that Black media is here and we're here to stay, because we are doing and having the conversations and doing the shows and really just representing the way we need to be represented. So check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, for the second hour, we wanted to have a conversation again about student loans, but this time, how does this affect you? How does this affect your wallets, your pocketbooks? What do you do? What can you do to make the changes if you find yourself qualified for student loan reduction? And we wanted to have a conversation with credible people to give us their insight and their guidance on how to navigate through all of this. So we are welcoming Mr. Brian Walsh, who is a financial planner with SoFi Bank, to give us some insight about how we deal with the student loan reductions and what can we expect with the ending of the student loan moratorium. Brian, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. First and foremost, Brian, you working in the financial sector. I've heard and I've been reading that some people say that this reduction, this call for a student loan forgiveness, will add to inflation, that it will add to the current financial space and crisis that we find ourselves in. How true was that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, right? Because on one hand, in the beginning of the year, starting in January, the moratorium on student loan payments is going to end. So all the people who've had federal student loans haven't been making those payments. Those payments are going to start back up. I guess in theory, that would offset any sort of inflationary impact of forgiving student loans. And then another important part of the announcement last week was there's some major improvements to income-driven repayment options. So I think it's tough to predict inflation. My thing is, I'm just grateful that we have clarity for federal student loan borrowers, because there's been a lot of people who have been waiting to have that clarity so that way they could make decisions on what to do with their student loans for a couple of years now, if not longer. So as a planner, that's probably more important to me than, okay, does it increase inflation a little bit? Does it decrease inflation? How does that all work?
Yeah. And so, because people are already trying to figure out how to cover the other costs, from everything from gas to food prices going up. Now you have this. The president has said in his plan that this is really a few things. One is that it's based upon your income. Two, that you can qualify from $10,000 to possibly $20,000 for loan forgiveness. And so, when I look at how the financial system in this country is set up, Brian, I'm wondering, we're seeing the political revolution is happening. When do you foresee, or do you foresee, a financial revolution happening when people are saying, you know what, enough is enough? We need to really look at the cost of tuition in this country. We need to look at the credit system and how, the issues of inequality, how that speaks to it. Do you foresee that happening, or do you see that on the horizon?
Yeah, I think from a wholesale perspective, I think it may be a ways off, unfortunately. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, conversations that I have with families kind of one-on-one, thinking through the college decision-making process, are much different than what happened, let's say 5, 7, 10 years ago. I think a lot more families are looking at this a little bit deeper and saying, okay, here's the financial aid I can get to go to different schools. Here's the cost of attendance. Here's the average time it takes to graduate. And then here's the average earnings for the major I'm looking at. And then they use that to figure out and say, okay, how much is that earning potential going to be compared to the student loan debt that I take on, or my son or daughter is going to take on? And I think that movement and that shift in people's mindsets is, I guess, very motivating to me, because I think that's the right way for people to look at it. And hopefully that kind of filters into the rest of the broader system. But for now, I do see a lot more people making those decisions on their own, so they don't have student loan debt that they can't pay back compared to their earning potential.
Yeah. So talk to us also about, as a part of this conversation, is talking about the great inequality that student loan debt has had on Black students versus white students. As a financial planner, are there some recommendations that you could offer to discuss how to bridge those gaps, especially for Black families whose sons, daughters, nieces, or nephews, or even grandsons and granddaughters might be first generation college goers, college graduates, How do you how does the financial planner of yourself start to say, okay, let's start to bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think, a couple thoughts come to mind. I mean, number one, like you just look at the data and you look at just like average student loan debt, breaking it down, and the average student loan debt held by a Black student is about 10% greater than the average student loan debt held by a white student when they graduate school. So it's certainly an issue. I think the couple things that I look at moving forward that ties to the announcement last week, which I'm a big fan of, these two pieces, is number one, you hit on it, the $10,000, up to $10,000 of forgiveness, or up to $20,000 of forgiveness if you receive the Pell Grant. I think to me, that's very, very important in tying that to the Pell Grant, because if you look at what happened to the Pell Grant over time, years ago, the Pell Grant covered a higher percentage of college education.
Right.
Since that time, costs have increased by a ton. Pell Grant hasn't increased so much. So the fact that if you could take advantage of that, then that's an opportunity there. The other piece announced last week is related to the improvements to income-driven repayment, which essentially it looks at and it says, okay, we're going to cap it towards a percentage of your income. And what that's going to do is that cap got lowered. So now it's 5% for undergrad, 10% for graduate school. And then the amount of income that they're basing on, that got raised. So I think that right there is going to do a great amount of work, quite frankly, to making student loan payments more affordable across the board when you combine those two things, and hopefully address some issues that we're seeing that are more systemic.
Folks, I want y'all to share your thoughts and your comments as we talk to Mr. Brian Walsh, who is a financial planner, student loan expert with SoFi Bank, to share your thoughts and pose your questions to Mr. Walsh about it. Make sure that y'all do so on our YouTube and our Facebook pages, and let's continue to have this conversation. So Brian, when we look at all of these like mitigating factors around this issue, first, what is the best attitude for us to take? Because some people might see this, I mean, it is a good first step, but some people still may not be able to truly celebrate because of all of these other mitigating factors. What's the best attitude first? And I know some people might be like, well, why talk attitude? Why don't you just talk about the money? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, based upon what I've read and understand about our relationship with money in this country, it starts with values and attitude and what you've been taught when you were a child, how you saw your family handle money, all of those things that created your context of money. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're not. It's funny because that's actually, I don't know, probably one of my favorite topics, the idea that everyone has their unique money personality. And it's formed all the way back to your childhood. And an example of that is like growing up, the only time I ever heard money talked about in my family was when there was like arguments and people were mad. So my natural tendency,
so that's how you associate money with anger.
Yeah, I try. Well, so I try not to, but so I have a money avoidance personality, which is ironic for a financial planner, where it's kind of like, okay, generally speaking, I want to avoid money. I don't like thinking about it. I don't like looking at my statements. I don't like any of that because it's kind of ingrained in me. Well, that's a problem if you just don't look at your statements, you don't pay your bills, you don't plan for the future, things like that. So I think part of it is understanding your natural relationship with money and then figure out a system to trick yourself around it. So like for me, I have to set everything on auto pay. If it doesn't get automated, it pretty much doesn't get done in my personal finances because of that personality thing. So I think that's a good starting point, is understanding that, so that way you could trick yourself into doing what you know you should do.
Man, oh man! So tripping yourself, you gotta trick yourself into money. Okay.
Sadly, I do, and this is what I do for a living. But I guess it shows anyone can do it.
Money avoidance. Okay, so you're talking about creating a system where money, your bills are still getting paid, and I know about the auto pay system. I got some bills that are on an auto pay system. But I also know that when it comes to saving, this is probably one of the most challenging things for a lot of people, whether you're black or white in America, just across the board, saving money. How do you effectively and efficiently save money, Brian?
Yeah, I think, well, the great thing with technology nowadays, you can automate pretty much anything you want to do related to your personal finances. So it could be auto pay for your bills. It could be, okay, if your goal is paying down debt, you could automatically make an extra $100 a month payment on a credit card account. If you need to save more money, you could automatically transfer an extra $100 to your savings account. You name it. So that's typically what we focus on, is like, hey, what's the next most important thing I can do with my money? And then how do we automate that? Because not just money avoiders like me, if you have to actually take an action to do it, the chances of it happening are significantly lower than if it just happens automatically without you even thinking about it. So I think
Wow.
it's focused on that.
Wow. It's a real psychology behind it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the numbers behind like personal finances and a lot of what I do for a living, that's the easy part. Like the human psychology on saying, okay, how do I delay gratification, or pass up something I really want to do or I really need to do in order to do something else? That's the hard part, is trying to kind of play those games and setting up that system.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we got a few moments left, but talk to us, like when you're trying to juggle so many different debts.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the student loan conversation, and I've been reading that, some of the accounts of a number of people who have $50,000, $60,000 or even more in debt, and how they decided to clamp down on their spending, how they decided to, become more disciplined when it comes to their income. And I often ask myself, like, man, can everybody do this? Is that what's required? Can it just simply be, say, look, man, you communicate with the bank, hey, I know I have this debt, automatically take it out. I'm just wondering, like, how do we get into a place where it's not like it has to change your life for 4 or 5 years, and it could just become a natural flow?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it depends on like what debt we're talking about and like how big of a challenge it is. I think number one is, with this student loan announcement, what we're talking to people about is, okay, like, let's figure out to take advantage of what we can with this announcement. If you are going to be eligible for forgiveness, let's make sure we have our paperwork together. We know whether or not we got the Pell Grant. And when that form gets released in a few weeks, like, let's fill out that form. And then if there's still student loans left after that, depending on the income range, there's going to be a good amount of people that should be worth exploring the new income-driven repayment option, because that could limit the student loan payments and free up room for other things in the budget. Whereas other people might, want to look at refinancing the rest of their student loans. I know, like, I ended up, I think I had like 50 or 60,000 in student loan debt when I was done. My wife had the same. And we went the refinancing route because it was a way for us to lower our interest rate, which meant more money was going towards paying down the principal and less towards interest. So I think it's figuring out which route you want to go, whether it's minimizing those payments or if you want to just try to get out from under that debt as quickly as possible.
Right. All right, so let me take a couple of questions from our watchers, our online culture crew, as we talk to Mr. Brian Walsh, a financial planner with SoFi Bank. Brian, Miss Respect 90 had a question for you. She said, does Brian have any advice for parents with children headed to college in a few years? That's a great question. How do you prepare for that big jump? I don't have that problem right now. My son is 9 and my daughter's 3. So I'm not, I don't have, we're going to be doing a college program that we're going to do. We have talked about saving for college for my 3-year-old and 9-year-old. So that's one thing, but give us some insight around that, Brian.
Yeah, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, so I'm a ways off too. I think for college, what we do is we want to start by focusing on a few different things. Number one, I think college selection is extremely important. And I think it's taking the time to look at the different options from an education perspective, and then considering the financial aid package combined with the prices that are listed online. A lot of times parents rule out schools based on the sticker price. Like, you see $40,000 a year online. Well, each school is going to have a different percentage of need-based aid that gets met on average. So it may not be 40, it might be 10, it might be 20. So really looking at what the actual price would be paid. And then I think combine that with what the major is going to be and what the earning potential of that major is going to be. Some majors, it matters to go to a more expensive, I guess a higher prestige school, all that fun stuff. Other majors, it quite frankly doesn't matter. It's just, okay, it's going to cost more money compared to the income. So it's selecting it that way.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece is bringing the student involved with it, because kids don't learn about money these days. For the most part, through the education system. Teaching them about finances through the college experience is a powerful lesson on how do you pick a school out, what do loans actually do, how do we budget money, and these lessons are going to carry with them for the rest of their lives. So I think that's a tremendous opportunity.
I might be answering my own question, but when you're talking about making those college choices, how much should money play into that decision? If your child wants to go to a certain college or they want to pursue a certain degree, should we have to say, well, look, mommy and daddy, uncle and auntie, grandpa, grandma, we just don't got the money for you to do that. You know what I mean? Like, should we, because I know people have made decisions like that based upon money, and that adds to it. I would think that would add to a person's view of money, where they feel like money has held me back. Subconsciously speaking, there's like, you know what? Money has always been an issue because I haven't been able to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, honestly, that's where the financial planner part of me and the dad part of me are at like a tug of war, quite frankly.
Okay.
The financial planner side of me says it needs to be a financial decision, because someone is going to pay for that degree. Whether it's, let's say it's me as a parent dipping into my retirement savings, working longer, living on less, or having issues down the road, or it's the student taking on this student loan debt that they might be in a really tough position to pay back based on their major and their earning potential, someone's going to pay for it. The dad part of me is like, hey, that's a tough situation to see, your kid wants to do it, and telling them no. But I do think it is important to think about those ramifications, knowing that someone, one way or another, is going to pay for it. So it really should be pretty influenced by the financial side of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got another comment. You don't like my music. You checked it and said high school only qualifies you for poverty nowadays. If we create financial disincentives to higher education, we aren't a meritocracy. I would disagree on that. The last part of that. I think America is a very meritocratic place. Like we reward merit. And I mean, to a big degree, but I love the point that you're making. You don't like my music. That just to say, okay, having a high school degree is not enough. Having a high school degree seems akin to now, Brian, saying that you graduated from kindergarten or something. It's not even a consideration. We assume that all adults, and it may not be true, but there's this natural assumption that if you're an adult, you've completed high school.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of one of those things where looking at the data, I mean, no matter what you look at, there is a significant difference in earning potential based on level of education, going from some high school to high school to some college to undergrad, all the way on to graduate degrees. So there's certainly earning differences between different levels of education. At the same time, though, I have seen much more conversations recently, especially with a lot of the labor shortages that are being faced in light of the pandemic, related to different career paths that might not be the traditional four-year educational institution. And I think that's something that may be coming back more and more, as opposed to where it was a few years ago. And ironically, it's something my friends and I debate when we're sitting there hanging out with young kids, whether or not we want our kids to go to college. Do we or don't we? So it's a tough challenge.
And Brian, I'm so happy that you brought that up, because especially in the Black community, not going to college is almost and I think we might culturally be getting into a better space with it, right? But if for a Black child to say, hey, I don't want to go to college, you're like, your parents are looking at you real strange. Like, you're not going to college. What you plan to do?
Yeah.
So,
I had that conversation with my mom before I went to college. She was not happy. She didn't go to college, but she made damn sure I was going to college.
Right. So if we're not, if young people are not pursuing the traditional college path as a financial planner,
Yeah.
do you prepare for that? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think we've had more conversations with parents that are looking through different trades and different skilled labor routes. And I've seen more of that recently. I've also seen a ton more. Maybe it was influenced heavily by the pandemic and people staying closer to home and not having kind of the traditional social aspect of an on-campus experience. Seen a lot more of 2-year schools then transitioning and transferring to 4-year schools, which greatly reduced the cost. So that's something I think that we're seeing a greater trend of as well, where it keeps them closer to home. It allows them that flexibility. And quite frankly, it allows them a smaller commitment as they're figuring out what they want to do with the rest of their lives, rather than diving right into the tuition of a 4-year school, knowing that you can transfer if you want to.
Right. Absolutely. Let's go to, let me get one more here. Let's talk about STEM or STEAM, China producer. This is what Mike V said. Mike, I would love for you to cite your source for this information. When you say China produces 1 million STEM graduates per year, zero loan debt. U.S. only produces 90,000 per year, weighted with student loan debt. You can't compete as a nation under these conditions. And Mike V, I know you got good sources. I would love to hear and get that source from you. But when we look at the competition of American students, the impact of student loans versus other countries around the globe, Brian, where does the American educational system fit? Where does the student loan situation fit?
Yeah, I think the student loan system, I mean, ultimately, when I look at it from a financial perspective, is adding the student loan debt to people's financial lives as they start a career. Studies show over and over again, what it does is it adds to financial stress, it adds to financial anxiety, it delays other major life milestones that are typically associated with previous generations that quite frankly didn't face this, or other countries with getting married, having kids, buying a house, all those other things. So more from a financial planner perspective, it tends to delay those types of things, which then has downstream ramifications. Because if you look at studies like, okay, homeowner versus non-homeowner, there's a big difference in overall wealth between the two groups. So you delay that, you delay those downstream impacts as well. So I think that's the challenging aspect, is how do we, it sounds crazy, SoFi sells student loans, but my mindset is like, how do we graduate with as little student loan debt as possible? There's more likely than not going to be some, but how do we pick the right school and budget accordingly to graduate with as little as possible? And that would ultimately be my goal.
Here's my final question to you, as we look at, as we're seeing this conversation and considering the big announcement last week. Do you think it's time for us to have a real discussion about the cost of tuition in this country? And I know that if we look at it, especially in a financial space, everything has a cause and everything has an effect. The effect of the student loan situation, the effect of debt, there is a real cause. And I think that it's time, Brian, I could be totally wrong on this, so I would love to get your take on this. But when we look at the cost of education in this country, whether you're talking about from your top tier colleges down to your community colleges, right? And then you look at what other countries are doing around the world on how they're handling education, allowing students to go to school for free, or allowing students to go to med school or engineering or other science and technology spaces for a much discounted rate. Is it worth it? Is this tuition that people are kicking out $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year?
Yep. And
you saddle that on an 18, 19, or 22, 24-year-old, and then you expect them to be productive. You expect them to be happy to be an adult, right? Like, is it worth it?
Yeah, so it's funny. I'm a financial nerd. Side note, I'm almost done with my PhD in personal finance, and when I think about education, there's two competing theories that I guess economists have related to, like, let's say college education. One is human capital theory, which basically says, like, hey, you go to get this education because you're learning skills, trade, whatever that's going to make you that much more productive, and why you're going to make more money. The other competing theory is called signaling theory, which basically says, hey, you go get this piece of paper and it's going to signal to people that you have the aptitude, more or less, in order to be a good, more productive employee. And I think deciding on that and where your views on that have a big, I guess, effect on where you land on the argument. If you're really going to learn these skills and that's why it increases your productivity, then I think, like, oh yeah, for sure it's worth it. If you're just going to just signal to people that you're, able to be hired and you're able to have these skills and all these other things, then maybe it's not. And maybe we should fundamentally look at changing things. So that's where the debate rages in my mind. And if you force me to choose, I would probably choose signaling theory, because I honestly do not utilize 95% of what I learned in my education on my day in and day out basis.
Wow.
And I probably should not say that on a recorded line. Now I'm in trouble.
Right. You on the culture here on the Black Star Network. We keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. Be authentic, Brian. I mean, and you said those two schools of thought is signaling theory, and what was the other one once again?
Human capital theory.
Wow.
Where essentially you increase your human capital or you signal to people. But one way or the other, the tuition situation has to get adjusted because it's grown by 2-3 times the rate of normal inflation over the last 30 or 40 years. And that's not sustainable to educate a growing workforce. So somewhere or the other has to get resolved.
I saw I saw Senator Elizabeth Warren kind of snap back at Mitch McConnell, Republican leader Mitch McConnell, because he was talking bad about the student loan forgiveness idea. And Senator Elizabeth Warren said the last time the cost of college when you were in college, sir, was $330 a year.
Yep.
I'm like, $330.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the cost of college versus average wage growth, and especially like minimum wage, which is, if you think about it, when I went to college, I was working minimum wage jobs. That gap has just increased so dramatically. So like the idea of, just, okay, I'm going to work here or work there and pay my way through school. I think that sounds good 20, 30 years ago. It's less realistic now with the drastic increase in costs.
I think there has to be back to your point, there has to be a conversation. And I don't know if other financial planners like yourself or, are pushing for that, or who needs to push for it. And I would love to be a part of those conversations, because there has to be. Like, this stuff is such a burden. And I know you see it because you work in the space every day. This is such a burden in this country, to the point that it's like we are crippling our own future. And I'm talking about the next generation that are coming out of these colleges, their ability to be productive. And it just forces you to wonder, like, why am I being penalized for just wanting to be better? I'm going to school because I want to become a better person. I want to be a better, productive human being. Yet I'm suffering under the brunt end of these consequences of debt. So what's the point? What's the point? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and honestly, that's where as a financial plan, when the announcement came out last week, I'm like, fantastic. We have clarity. And I've had hundreds of conversations with people who are just like crippled with student loan debt in my time working at SoFi. The other part of me is like, man, when are we going to have that conversation addressing the college cost side of things? Is what was announced last week, does that do anything to address the college cost side? And I agree, that would probably be, the other part of me is hoping that conversation gets nudged forward sometime, but politics does not seem to be the easiest thing to arrive at a middle ground solution these days.
Right, right. Last quick question, and I appreciate your extra time that you're spending with us, Brian. Really quickly, one person asked the Fed, said, would it be better to send our kids abroad to school, given all of this stuff right now with student loans?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, it's going to depend on residency and like actually qualifying to have tuition covered in different locations. It's going to be connected to like ultimately like whether or not you establish residency in that country. There are certain programs that allow you to send your kids to schools that are affiliated with U.S. universities. But I mean, the complications of getting residency and citizenship in different countries is something that I've looked into a little bit, but is extremely complicated in order to actually make it work to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. Brian Walsh, financial planner and student loan expert with SoFi, who is working on his PhD into personal finance. I'm expecting a book from you soon as well, Brian, just to throw that out there.
You and my wife both. She's like, when's something going to come from all this random studying you do?
I truly appreciate you, sir, for spending time, a little bit of extra time with us here on The Culture and giving us this insight. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, I'm going to share with you how one AP African-American course is debuting this fall and some trending topics. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. It sounds a little bit like we're going to take a quick pause because we got a little bit of technical issues, but stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks. Welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. And I wanted to just, as we close out the program, to quickly just share a couple of things about what's trending, but another thing about what many people are saying about a new college course on African American studies. And Ariel, if we could work on the sound piece of this, still getting a little feedback. But here's the situation about this African American course. This fall, take a look at this, and I want to share this with you from Time Magazine, what they're saying about this new AP African American course. Take a look, folks. This fall, 60 schools nationwide will be piloting the new AP African American Studies this year. The course will be the College Board's 40th advanced placement course and the first new AP course since 2014. Next year, students will officially be able to take the class to earn college credits at about 35 colleges from Virginia Tech to Tuskegee University. Yet, the pilot program arrives at a time when lessons on the Black American and African diaspora experience are at the center of a nationwide debate. Teachers are being accused of teaching critical race theory, which is a decades-old academic framework that, in fact, is rarely taught below the graduate level. Among scholars, CRT is a way to look at how legal systems and other institutions perpetuate racism and exclusion, but in the popular imagination of the past several years, it has become a byword for anything to do with teaching the history of racism in America. All right, so this new course is something that I think is important and is needed. If you did not know, you may have a son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your grandson, your granddaughter, who may be taking this course in their school as it debuts this fall. But this is interesting, folks, because in the course of this, talking about history, there are also going to be some infused elements of popular culture, and going as far as to see as having a discussion about Marvel's Black Panther. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Now, one of our foremost scholars on race and history in this country is Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. He said that this course, take a look at what he had to say. He said, nothing is more dramatic than having the College Board launch an AP course in a field that signifies ultimate acceptance and ultimate academic legitimacy. He helped to develop the AP African American Studies curriculum. He said AP African American Studies is not CRT. It's not the 1619 project. It is a mainstream, rigorously vetted academic approach to a vibrant field of study, one half a century old in the American Academy, and much older, of course, in historically Black colleges and universities. So Dr. Gates has talked about the importance of this. He's been on the ground, making sure that this course of study is something that really reflects where we are today. And so I think just from the cultural side of things, we're going to see some new conversations, some more updated, modern, and contemporary conversations about our history and the contributions that we make, and more importantly, how we are making America better. And it's a good thing that colleges across this country are starting to embrace this, and we should be seeing more colleges like this. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention, that this new course of study is going to be happening, and that you should expect some great things for it. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, train post and doing the most, stay with us. It's the culture on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks. As we close out today's show, let me pick up with you a little bit of some of the big trending topics right now. One is, you might be seeing something different on Twitter. If you are active on that social media platform, well, don't be surprised to see a brand new feature, a feature that has been long overdue, the edit button. Yep, folks, farewell to typos. Twitter has unveiled an edit button. It only took him 10 years. Yeah. So if you don't tweet, I like to tweet. I'm starting to get back into it more and more. But one of the things that it's like a pet peeve is that I see tweets that are misspelled. Now, some of it could just be because some people just don't know how to spell certain words, but other could be just simply, sometimes you're typing so fast that you don't take the time to just, you just type and tweet. So I'm very excited about this small feature that's going to make a big difference of editing the messages on Twitter. So Twitter has officially said that, and Twitter was unveiled in 2006, folks. So it's been, 16 years. 16 years where other social media platforms decided to have the edit button or have an edit feature like Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is one of the last big three. And it makes the edit button the biggest shift at the social media service since 2017, when Twitter increased the character limit for messages to 280 characters from 140. Now, Twitter's commitment to First Draft made it a destination for online brawls and hot takes, but people have often regretted their choice of words or noticed a misspelling just after posting a tweet. And so this is going to be interesting. Now, Elon Musk, remember Elon Musk, y'all? Elon Musk, who was initially trying to buy the social media platform for $44 billion. That's not going to happen. He has favored an edit button. However, at that time, Twitter didn't budge, and the company argued that there was something noble. Take a listen. I'm not making this up. Something noble in leaving mistakes on display. According to Twitter, a nefarious user could change his tweet after it had already been shared widely, swapping a benign message for a misleading one. So they recently have been reconsidering an edit button as it tried to expand its service by attracting people who might be more careful with their words. And so, according to their statement, Twitter says that they're hoping that with the availability of edit tweeting will feel more approachable and less stressful. You should be able to participate in the conversation in a way that makes sense to you. Well, let me tell you what doesn't make sense, Twitter. You taking so damn long to add the feature. The edit button will be granted to Twitter employees first for internal testing and then to users of its subscription service, Twitter Blue. The company eventually, though it did not specify when, plans to give all users the options to alter their tweets. So it might still be some time before we get to fix our misspellings. And I get it. There might be something noble about this, showing people's vulnerability, showing people aren't perfect, because social media has been this space where now is not just being authentic. You got to be perfect. You got to look a certain way and all of those things, especially on Instagram. But have you ever tried to read a message where people misspell words? Have you ever tried to read a message where people speak, they write the way they speak, which is not grammatically correct? Yeah, it's frustrating. If I can't read, or if I can't understand, or if I can't be past your words and how you spell it, and I can't go into all of the stuff like, oh, they meant to say, and what was the word again? Just add an edit button and let us express ourselves the way we need to express ourselves. Now, that removes the excuse that Twitter doesn't have an edit button at this point. And I do this when I text sometimes. Instead of saying YOU, I use the letter U. But when I text on Twitter or on social media, I try to be grammatically correct. I really do. So social media should encourage people to be grammatically correct. All right. So if you're on Twitter, just keep your eyes open, because edit is coming. All right. The other thing that so many of you have been saying all throughout today is the simple fact that Serena Williams is on fire right now for the U.S. Open, which has been going to be her last major competition before she steps down from the sport. And right now, she has moved on to the third round of the U.S. Open. Wow! Now, we shared with you yesterday her sister Venus did not make it through the first round, but Venus is always there to support Serena. And so we're seeing now Serena advancing to the third round after her upset yesterday. And many of you are already saying y'all are taking a look and watching what happens with the great Serena Williams. So we will see how things go over these next couple of days and her placement with the U.S. Open. But let me just tell you, there's no sweeter way of ending your career than with a major, major win. So I hope that our sister Serena is able. She's already solidified her place in tennis history and sports history, but it's just be a nice cherry on top to take it all for the U.S. Open. So big shout out to Serena Williams. Big shout out to all of the great things that she's been able to accomplish and to all the people that she has inspired. And most importantly, big shout out to this Williams sister and to the Williams family for showing us that we all can be great, regardless of who we are and where we come from. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's show. Make sure y'all tune in tomorrow. We're going to have a number of great conversations lined up for you, so y'all know that y'all need to check us out. Make sure you continue to support us here at Black Star Network financially. Share the content. Let people know about the great things that we're doing. Go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, and make sure you let folks know. Roland Martin, Farajii Muhammad, Dr. Jackie Martin. You're letting know that, that all of our wonderful hosts here on Black Star Network, we're doing the damn thing. But guess what? This is a people-powered movement, and we need your support. So make sure y'all do your due diligence, support us, download the app, share the word, spread the word, and continue to tune in to the Black Star Network, where we'll have those conversations that you don't see on other news spaces, but you'll definitely see it here because we are unapologetically Black. All right, so make sure y'all continue to support us there. Big shout out to my online culture crew. Y'all know who y'all are. So many names and so many people. So I just want to say thank you again for tuning in today and being a part of the conversation. We truly, truly appreciate it. I want to thank my guy, Mr. Politics himself, Hassan Giordano, for checking in. I want to thank Mr. Brian Walsh, and I want to thank you. Also want to thank my dynamic team, Joel, Shannon, Ariel, King Keenan. I want to thank Lisa and all of my culture crew that come on with me each and every day, each and every week of this for the show. So again, we're working on bringing some new voices, so stay tuned for that. I'm very, very excited about bringing those new voices on. As always, make sure y'all check out Roland Martin Unfiltered. It's Thursday night. Y'all know how they do. Big shout out to Dr. Carr, to Reese, to Erica, to all of the family at RMU. I miss you guys, but I trust and believe we love it on this side too. My day goes a little bit quicker. It's a little bit earlier to have it on this side. But big shout out to my RMU Thursday night panel. Y'all make sure y'all check them out too. And my Friday night panel, and to all of the great people that come on RMU each and every day. As always, folks, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. Follow me on all social media at the For Real Farajii on Instagram. I'm on Twitter at Farajii, Farajii. And of course, I'm on Facebook. You see that? There it is, all right there. Boop, boop, boop. You can follow me right there, folks. I'm looking for new followers. I will follow back. I will engage with you. But again, we want to continue to have these conversations. I appreciate y'all. I thank y'all. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.